Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Mike and you're watching Triple T Acres. And in today's video, I'm going to be installing this 50 amp RV outlet on my pole building. Now, listen, I want you to fully understand what I'm about to tell you. I'm going to show you the whole process on how I do it, but I want to make it very clear. You need to follow your state and local laws when it comes to doing any electrical work. So make sure you consult a licensed electrician if you decide to do this yourself. But that being said, in my state, this is my building and I'm allowed to do the work myself. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to be cutting any corners whatsoever. So if this is something you're interested in, stick around. I hope you enjoy the video. All right, guys, before we get started, I wanted to show you everything I have here that I'm going to be using to install this. Now, throughout this project, there might be some additional things, so stick around to pay attention to any of that. I will mention those as they come up. But what I have here is a 50 amp RV outlet. It's got this nice cover on the front of it that pulls up and I can even lock it. What's really nice about this setup is I have an outlet for multiple uses. I have the 50 amp outlet here, a 30 amp outlet here, and a 20 amp outlet there. So that gives me a wide variety of uses out here. So depending on what kind of camper I've got, I'll be able to use it. Now, with that being said, I think it's really important that if you're gonna be doing this, to go ahead and do the 50 amp RV outlet, only because you never know what the future holds. So if you have a camper that has 30 amps, you'll be able to use this, but if you ever upgrade in the future, you'll already be ready to go for that. And if you ever sell your property or sell your building, that's just gonna be another added value to it for the next person that might have a 50 amp camper. Now, something else that came with this in the box is just a little adapter here for a 110 volt plug, just a regular outlet that'll go there, because as everything gets plugged in, everything kind of hangs out the bottom. This allows it, if you can see here, it's got a 90-degree here, allows the cord to be plugged in that way. The other thing I have here is some conduit and a couple adapters here. I'll go over that a little bit later, but this is so that the wire can travel through the spray foam that I have on my wall. There's about 5.5 inches, sometimes 6. The other thing you're gonna need is a 50 amp double pole. So it's really important to know that the type of service that you have on your building needs to be able to handle another double pole station. So if you have a 100 amp service or you have 200 amp service, which is what I have, this should work well. Make sure you have enough space in your box that you can add a double pole 50 amp breaker. The next thing you're gonna need, anytime you're gonna do 50 amps, you're gonna need 6 gauge wire. Now, it's really expensive wire, unfortunately, but again, I'm not gonna be cutting any corners. I wanna make sure I do everything right. But 6-3 wire allows 2 hots, a neutral, and a ground. Now, some heavy duty appliances don't need that neutral wire, but this is really important because we do have a 20 amp and a 30 amp service here, so we're gonna need that neutral. But I'm not gonna get in the weeds about how electricity works. This is gonna be just mainly an install. Now, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take this wire over to my panel. I'm gonna start taking some of the covers off, and we're gonna start installing the wire, and we're gonna go do the 50 amp outlet on the side of the building. All right, before we get into the wiring inside the panel, I wanted to show you how I'm gonna be running the wire. Now, I had this building spray foam not too long ago, and I haven't installed my walls just yet. So I don't have anything to run the wire on horizontally. So what I've gotta do temporarily is I'm gonna take the wire out of the top of my box. I'm gonna run it across this post and then this post, and then that'll give me something I could run my wire up against. So I'm gonna run the wire up there, and then I'm gonna run the wire across this catwalk. It's gonna go all the way down the trusses, and then around this truss right here, I'm gonna follow the wire all the way down, and then it's gonna follow this post, and then the wire is gonna exit the building over here somewhere. So let me show you outside where I'm gonna be mounting the box. All right, so we're out here. There's the window inside, and then that post is gonna be running somewhere in here. I'm gonna have to get some measurements. As you can see, I've got a wall girt that follows those screws on the inside, and then I've got another one that runs here. And we are going to find the 2x4 wall girts that's hidden inside that foam, and that's what we're going to be mounting the outlet box to. Now, what you can't see is there's some additional framing behind the metal wall here, which is for the window framing. You don't really screw the metal siding into that, otherwise it'd be a weird line of screws. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna catch the top of the box on the window framing and then catch that wall girt at the bottom. And you'll see that here in just a little bit. Now, I wanted to make another note before we get going on running this wire. If you haven't built your building yet, something to think about is where are you going to install your panel? If you can make the panel closest to the outlet, that is great. You're gonna save a lot of money on copper. I had to buy 125 feet to get it to over here. I didn't wanna come up short, so I bought a little bit of extra. But if that outlet was just on the other side of it, that'd be great. But in my situation, my camper has to be parked over there. That's where I have my parking pad for the camper, so unfortunately, I've got to make this really long run. And if you've priced copper lately, it is so expensive, especially when you start getting into this high gauge 6-3 wire. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run the wire. I'm going to put it on a quick time lapse. You don't need to see me run wire, but we're going to come back here in just a second and I'm going to slow everything down and we're going to wire everything into the panel and then we're going to wire the outlet on this side of the building. So stick around, guys. We've got the wire all roughed in, and man, let me tell you, that stuff is very heavy and hard to manage like that. Instead of running it on this board, I decided that I didn't want to run across the truss all the way over. So I stuck with running it across my header. And what's nice is I was actually able to tuck that wire behind there, and I'll secure all this stuff up. Once I get some higher gauge wire staples, I'll be able to hold that stuff and dress it up and make it look really nice. So now that we have all of the wire ran, roughed in, what I want to do is I want to move to the box. We're going to wire the box up. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it because I can't see my studs here. I can see the screws on the outside of the building to show me where my wood is, but I also have some window framing that's hidden in there too. So I'm going to show you a little trick I did to find my studs and then how to keep that box next to that post because you can't really see the post on the outside of the building. So let's get that wired up. Then we'll move over to the panel and get it all hot. So stick around. All right, so I started off in here because I want to make sure that the wire comes through and doesn't hit the post. Ideally, I know on the other side of the wall, I want this to be mounted as close as I can to that post. So what I did is I took this level here and I know that there's framing underneath this. There's a 2x4 that goes all the way across. Now, my metal siding is not screwed to this. I just have screws that go all the way around that. Now I have another board that's in here somewhere. So what I want to do is I want to be able to find this stud on the outside. So what I did is I took this level and I went center of that board, made sure the bubble was in the middle, and then I marked it. So I marked a line there, and then what I did is I took the box, and inside the box, I'll show you here. So inside that box, there's a mounting hole right here. So what I did is I took a nail, I lined this thing up, and I pushed the nail right where I marked it on that foam. Then I took a drill bit, nice and long, and I went right in that spot, drilled it all the way, and exited the outside of the building. So now all I got to do at this point is take this box outside and then screw that hole in there, and then it should be perfectly lined up against this on the outside. All right, let's get this box opened up. There's a little button here that locks this cover in place, and you can even actually put a padlock in there too. All right, now we got 2 screws here, and then this panel will come right off. Now the hole I want to punch out is actually right there. It's a 1-inch hole. That's where I want my wires to come in. So we're going to knock this hole out, and then we'll be able to go out there and mount this box, and then I'll drill that hole out through the building so that I can feed the wire in that way. So I flipped the box on its face, and these holes are slightly perforated. They got 2 little tabs here that you can work. I've got just a little punch here. We're going to work our way around it, and hopefully we can bend it out of its place there. There we go. Here's the tab. All right, so we've got the box temporarily mounted here on the side of the building, and I wanted to show you why I did that. See, on the back of the box, because of the ribs of the building, I've got a gap here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to measure this gap, and I have this piece of PVC. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that down and create nice little spacers for the screws. So everything's in there now. All I got to do is cut this and get it mounted. Then we're going to go inside here. We're going to drill out this hole so we can get our wire to feed through, and then we're going to get this thing all wired up. Here's spacer 1, and we'll try to make them all the same. Got all 3 of our spacers here. Unfortunately, I got to drill through this rib. Now for the big guns. Not gonna lie, that's nerve-wracking. That's where we're gonna bring the wire through. So we already roughed it in. I've got my hole drilled out now, and this is where I'm gonna put the conduit through there. And what I have here is a couple adapters, and I'll put these in the description if you're wanting to do it the same way. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and push this thing through, and I had to make this hole a lot bigger than I expected. So I'm gonna run a bead of caulk all the way around that, and then I'll put the box on there. The nice thing about this adapter is it's got an O-ring around there to keep the moisture out of the box. Now I'm just screwing this lock washer on the other side of it, threading it in to squeeze that gasket. So we got the top in. Now we've got a couple screws here on the bottom. You're gonna need a good long extension for these. It's mounted. Now we're gonna feed the wire through here and start wiring it up. Now before we go in and push the wire through, I wanted to show you those spacers I was doing here. As you can see right there, they kind of keep it up off of it, give it something to push up against rather than being pressed up against that middle there. So that's what I was doing with the spacers. Nice and solid too. Okay, we're back inside, and this is where the conduit came out. What I have here is a female to male. So this will go right over to my conduit, and it has a female threaded side on this side. Well, I've got one of these 1-inch wire clamps. It's going to screw right into that. And then I'll add this to this conduit, and what that'll do is it will help clamp that wire down and hold it in place, because anytime you're gonna feed it through a panel, they've gotta have these wire clamps on them to keep them secured. So let's run the wire through, then we're gonna get out there and get this thing wired up. All right, we're clamped. So get this thing wired. All right, we're back out here, and now we're gonna get it wired. And you may be asking yourself, why the heck would you feed all that through here? Well, copper is so expensive, and I wanted to make sure I put it all out, and I'm only going to cut off what I need. So I've got a Sawzall here because this is such thick gauge. I'm going to cut it off here, giving myself plenty of space. I can tuck it in there and get it all wired up. So let's go ahead and cut it right. I'll call it right here. Now we're going to cut all this jacket back. We are not wired inside yet, so everything I'm doing here, the electricity is not turned on to it. When you cut this jacket, you want to try to make sure you don't punch into the other wires inside there. Okay, so now we have 4 wires in here. Your red and your black are hot, and it does not matter how they go on, but the most important part of this whole thing is to get it to this double pole 50 amp breaker. So these 2 are going to go into these, and then I'm going to bridge a hot from this side to the 30 amp, and then this side to the 20 amp. So let's go ahead and strip these back and get them plugged into these right here. So as you can see, this piece right here is going to bridge across the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and there it is. That hot side is running to that side, and then I've got another shorter piece. It's going to run it side by side here. All right, so there we have our bridges. Now all we got to do, got everything stripped back here. The neutral is running to that bus bar. The ground is running to that. And all of these are already pre-wired, so their neutrals and everything are connected. All we're trying to do is get the hot to them, and that's what these are right here. And what that's going to do is they're going to share it across there. Okay, there's that one. Now we're going to put the panel cover back on the front and start wiring up on the inside. All right, we're wired up. Now we're going to go inside and get it all wired into the panel. Should be good to go. We're going to take the cover off the panel, and this is where it's really important to have some experience. And again, you should consult a licensed electrician if you're not comfortable doing this kind of thing. Now this is really important. Everything in here is energized right now. I'm going to shut the main off, which is going to get rid of all my power because I got to be really careful. But that doesn't mean there's still not energy in here. There's still energy coming in from the top. Everything down here will be shut off, so I still got to be really, really careful. So I'm going to shut this off. I got a power station. I'm going to flip a light on so we can see what we're doing. All right, back in business. Okay, so all the power's off right now. Now what I want to do is I need to get this wire ran inside here. I left plenty on here. I need to figure out where I want to notch in. And I believe I want to come in from the top, maybe here on the side. Let me work that out real quick and we'll be right back. So we got it punched out and I've got the wire locker right here. Now all I got to do is feed this. Now again, my panel is off, the main breaker is off. So I'm gonna go ahead and send this thing through and we're gonna pull it out the front here. Now I'm going ahead and lock that clamp here at the top. Next thing I gotta do is cut this sheathing off. Now, same thing out there, we've got 4 wires here. 2 hots, a neutral, and a ground. Over here I've got my ground bus, and then I actually have some neutrals over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get everything kind of pre-measured out. So I've got the ground here. I'm gonna go ahead and run it to the other side. I think that'll keep it clean here. And there's my ground. You can see my main ground coming in. That's what's connected to that bus wire there. Actually want to run them behind even the other wires. So we're gonna tuck it all the way back behind my other wires here. All right, there's a good bend. Okay, that one's good. Now we'll move on to the neutral, and we'll keep this one close. We're gonna use one of these so I don't have to try to fight this as much. Give it a nice elbow. Get behind our other wires here. So now we've got our ground and our neutral set. Now we've got these 2 hots. Now the 2 hots are going to go in my double pole 50 amp breaker. We got 2 set screws here. One will go on each side. It doesn't matter, black or red, does not matter whatsoever. Once that in, then we clip it into the system and then we should be good to go. So let's get these kind of pre-measured out so they're not jammed in here. We'll go, I'd say they both could be good right here. Okay, now we go into these, loosen them up, give them some space. Okay, good and snug. Check, pull on them good and tight. Now we clip them in. And that's it. We got our 2 hots, our neutral and our ground. You could tell which one's neutral, which one's ground by based on some of where your whites are going. Next thing we got to do, we got to make sure we knock out 2 more spots. So as you can see, I've got 2 here. So now I got to knock these 2 out. That way I can put this panel back on. Then we'll turn the power on, see if we got any juice. Got those knockouts out. We'll hang this in here. Perfect. Right there's where it is. I'm going to label it RV outlet here, or just RV or camper. All right, let's kick it on. We'll kick the whole main power back on. Okay, good. Let's flip the breaker on and see if we burn the place down. All right, it should have power. Let's go check it out. Moment of truth. Back out here at the outlet. Let's flip our breaker on. I've got a circular saw we're gonna plug in. I got a green light, so that's a good sign. All right, I got a light here. Let's see if it works. Good deal. All right, well, that's a good sign. We've got power to our outlet. Man, that is going to be so nice. Now, again, we've got our 50 amp, our 30, and our 20 amp. Each one has their own breaker in here, so that is super nice. I'll just leave them off for now. So me and my family just went and looked at a new camper, which is the reason why I put this thing in. And it has 2 air conditioning units, which requires 50 amps. Now, if I would have installed the 30 amp service like for my previous camper, which we were running off extension cords before, and I knew all along that I really wanted to upgrade to a nice service like this. But if I had to put that 30 amp service in, not knowing that I was going to upgrade in the future, I would have been upset doing all that work when I'm already in here to go ahead and do the max capacity that you should do, which is 50 amps. So if you're going to do this project, it might be a good idea just to go ahead with the 50 amp service. Well, that was the complete install of the 50 amp RV outlet that I purchased off of Amazon. And if you're interested in getting one for yourself, check out the description. I'll have a couple affiliate links in there with several of the things that I use to install this. And if you use them, I will get a little bit of a commission, but it won't cost you any extra. Guys, if this has helped you and you like this kind of content, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, watch some of these videos on the side. But until next time, we'll see you in the next video.